Welcome back. Today's episode is sponsored by the Gimblett Gravels. We're going to be talking about the Gimblett Gravels in the next probably half a dozen episodes or so. And what you need to do if you're a big fan of wine and interesting wines and really trying to get your head around what is going on in this amazing appellation of the Gimblett Gravels, what you need to do is go to gimblettgravels.com. That's gimblettgravels.com. I suggest first clicking on terroir and then clicking on soil. And that's where it all begins. Have a little read, get comfortable, poke around, look at the wineries, look at the story, the ancient Narora River, all these amazing things, and what makes this place so unique for these amazing wines that grow there. After you're done doing all that, click on About, and then go down to Annual Vintage Selection. Now, I don't know how many people realize this, but since 2008, the Gimblett Gravels Association has put out an annual vintage selection, and these are chosen by both the association, but also they get in a big flash wine writer or aficionado. And the 2015 wines have just been released. There is a group of wines that have been selected that are the standouts from that vintage, and you can now purchase them. I think it's for the first time ever they've been available to the public. And I've seen some tweets and I've seen some things about it, but I haven't, and that they've selected them, but I haven't seen a lot of publicity yet about the fact that, you know, the average Joe can just log on and buy them. You're talking about some of the top wines produced in that year in the entire country. 2015 was a low cropping year, but a very good summer and an excellent vintage with great intensity. So I think you'll find it's a really good deal, and again, a very special gift for somebody or for yourself, hopefully. So I would hop on that. And this episode is also sponsored, of course, by Decibel Wines. Go to decibelwines.com and check out our store up there. Use the promo code DB Podcast and get 10% off your first order. We ship to the UK, the US, Australia, free all over New Zealand. It's really kind of built into the price for if you're shipping to the US, for instance. So yeah, visit the website. Also, hashtag Decibel Wines and hashtag Drink Decibel. We'll reach out to you. We've been throwing a few things around to people who do that on both Instagram and Facebook, where you can find me at Decibel Dan is who I am there. And on, that's on Facebook and Twitter. But on Facebook, that's on Instagram and Twitter. Jesus, it's so hard to keep up. Instagram and Twitter is at Decibel Dan. Facebook is just Decibel Wines. You'll find us there. And lots of info up on the website. Always trying to update that and, continue to tell my story. We've just updated the store over the last month or so there's some really all brand new wines up there, including the 2016 Rosé, which is basically only released right now in New Zealand, but it's on its way to America, which is pretty exciting. So stand by and look for that. And so today I talked to Ollie Powrie, who is the Viticulturist for Villa Maria Group. So he works with Villa Maria wines, Vital Estate, Esk Valley wines, probably a bit of Thornbury and a bit of Tiawa in there as well. And I've known Ollie since 2008, probably 2009. I think we definitely met in 2008, became, a little more familiar with each other in 2009 when I worked at Vital Estate with winemaker Hugh Crichton there and Richard Painter at the time, who's now at Tiawa, and we're going to talk to him in a couple weeks, which is exciting. But Ollie was just a guy who I always had a lot of respect for, mostly because of his demeanor, and he just comes across as somebody knowledgeable, confident, and somebody who seems to know what they're doing out in the vines. He has a really good way of explaining things in a sort of calm, cool way. And he's a cool guy, man. It was great talking to him. and I hope you guys enjoy it. Cheers. We're here talking to my old buddy Ollie from 10 years ago, man. Last time we technically worked together, but you had your little offices at Vital Estate, and I was a green, still student winemaker at that point. But that was great vintage, and really good time working for Vital. But how long have you been at Villa Maria?
Yeah, so it is 10 years. It's gone fast. So I started...
Oh, you started not long before that?
Yeah, I started just before the 2007 harvest. So
that would have been a good few years to start with then.
So I was feeling a bit green myself at that point.
Yeah.
Rocked into the company Viticulturist role at Villa Maria just before harvest. And had Hugh Crichton starting the same vintage. It was his first vintage at Vital as winemaker. So, but like you say, it was a great vintage, really amazing weather. So it was about... Picking decisions were all about flavour. It wasn't about bad weather coming or anything like that.
Yeah. It's good when we get years like that.
Yeah.
Doesn't always happen. But you're a Hawke's Bay guy. You grew up here?
Yeah. Grew up in Napier and went to high school here and then went away to Otago for university for a while. I did a science degree in plant biology there. Had no thoughts of the wine industry at that stage though. And
that's a good place to start, though, I guess.
Yeah, no, it was. It's been really useful, and then travelled overseas, mainly living in the UK, working, saving money to travel to the continent. And it was while I was over there, I thought viticulture was something I really wanted to look at and pursue. So came back and studied at EIT.
That's right. I see your picture in the airport.
It's about time they took that thing down.
I know you guys, you and Nick look so young in that photo.
Yeah, that's right. They're either going to have to update it or get rid of it.
Oh, they're waiting for the next stars to arise of EIT, I guess. Because I suppose they're quite proud of you guys, and both of you guys have done well. So obviously, between you don't just come back from Europe and start as viticulturist for Villa Maria. So did you do vintages? You were popping around. What was going on?
So just to when I thought of doing the viticulture degree, I'd hooked up a vintage in Beaujolais, met some Australians who were on their way to do a vintage there, and they said, come along. And I thought before I sign up for 2 years of the viticulture degree, I'd do that, and loved it, really enjoyed being in the vineyard. But, in the evenings we'd eat together and open up old bottles of wine and talk about these wines. Had a great time. And so then had 2 years studying to do the viticulture degree. And while I was there, I worked at Cellini. There was a viticulturist there called Craig Single at the time. And so he took me under his wing a bit and made sure I got a really good broad sort of level of experience at Cellini. And then when I graduated, I actually got a job with Sacred Hill just down the road here.
Mm-hmm. You're playing with all the big hitters, man.
That's right.
Some good wines you're playing with, yeah.
And so where the Deerstalkers Vineyard is now, that was had a whole lot of pine trees on it, and there was a rifle range in there as well. And so my job was to work with the viticulturists at that stage to plant that bare land, pull all the trees out and then plant
the gravels there? No,
it is.
Deerstalkers, yeah.
So opposite Cornerstone.
Because I always mix up the name between that and the Rifleman's.
Okay,
the Rifleman's is...
That's sort of up the Dartmoor.
Yeah, it's Dartmoor, that's right, yeah. We just talked to Tony last week. So,
okay, cool.
Yeah. Well, I want to rewind a second. So, speaking of being green, you were probably sort of bright-eyed and excited when you're in Beaujolais. What did you find? Because that's a hot wine region now. I mean, at least in the States, and I've noticed people like Maison Veron up in Auckland, they're bringing in a lot of Beaujolais these days, and it just seems to be the world is, I mean, it's never really gone away, but it's really coming around to that style of wine now. And I think it bodes well for New Zealand style as well, especially, because they kind of come off as cool climate, though I'm not sure they are. But what was your experience there as like the wines and what you loved? And
yeah, sure. This was back in, this was 99 we were there. And I hadn't drunk a lot of Beaujolais wines before we got there, but like you say, they do come across as cool climate. They're fresh, and but in terms of the structure of some of those wines from the better vineyards were really interesting as well, and still had that savoury component to them as well, especially with a bit of age.
Yeah.
So I'm still not out buying a lot of Beaujolais, but I definitely enjoy drinking them when I get a chance.
Yeah, they're still not the easiest thing to find in New Zealand, but like I said, you can kind of see a trend. I was just up in Auckland last week selling some wine, and seeing it on the odd wine list, and you just didn't see it before.
Yeah, sure.
And like I said, I think that's good. And then there's a few people making some Gamay here and there popping up. So
yeah, and you meet people in New Zealand that really enjoy the wines and follow them. I've got a friend here in Hawke's Bay, and he loves matching Gamay with what he's cooking if he has a dinner party or something, and he really enjoys it.
Yeah, I think it's sort of a really good wine to transition to change people's perceptions of what a red wine can be. It doesn't always have to be this big, voluptuous, jammy, juicy. Not that we in Hawke's Bay make necessarily that, but we certainly aim, I think, to make like fleshier wines and things like that,
sure.
Where those wines have a bit of a bite to them. And I've had some conversations with people that we think, Hawke's Bay, and we're going to get to the Gimblett Gravels soon, but probably the Gimblett Gravels being the top of that list, and Bridgepaw Triangle next to it. Those are sites where you can make some bigger reds. But I think a lot of Hawke's Bay is probably more suited for wines of that style, that maybe are a little more. I don't know about Pinot. I think probably somewhere, but Villa's had some Pinot, Hawke's Bay
we
Pinots.
did have a planting at Calturn Vineyard just down the road here.
Yeah.
And, I think even when you're at Vital, you probably did a bit of plunging of some stock.
Yeah, we did the
Stop Bank Pinot,
yeah.
That's right.
Is that from Calturn?
It was, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So it's, and it did really well. We had 5 different clones there. But unfortunately, that particular planting, it was early on in terms of managing virus in the vineyards, and the virus got a little bit out of control to the point that it was actually better to pull the blocks out and start again.
Yeah.
And of course, when it came to replanting it, Chardonnay was a more obvious choice. So
they're going for it with the Chardonnay, yeah.
So, the
Calturn Chardonnay's done pretty well, so I'd say
that's right.
It's a good decision,
And where we've planted Chardonnay back into those old Pinot sites is, the Chardonnay's loving it there too. But Pinot, I think we are interested in looking at other possibilities in Hawke's Bay, probably further up the road from there, heading up into the river terraces, Maracaibo, in particular, and possibly over in central Hawke's Bay. It's got to be a pretty exciting place. Looking at what
cheaper land.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Got to watch getting speeding tickets though. Trust me, I've been burned, man. It's rough going up and back from Martinborough. I try to cut back through that way, but you see the potential. When you drive down south.
Yeah.
There's a clear difference. I feel when somewhere in there, I always it happens, and I don't always take notice of exactly where it happens. But you go, oh, I'm not in Hawke's Bay anymore.
Yeah, that's
it's
right.
a bit overcast, and you're a lot closer to those mountain ranges, and I guess where the windmills at? Is that Greytown? No, not Greytown. It's like Woodville or something.
Woodville,
like you start going, I'm not in Hawke's Bay anymore. But certainly before that, you feel like, oh, there's still good sunlight here, and there's some nice rolling hills north facing, and there's some good, probably old river terraces and things we don't know about.
There'd be some
and cheaper.
If you even, State Highway 50 is a fairly small road, but if you get off on some of those side roads, you see some amazing properties and things. But, I think the rainfall as you get closer to the mountains, for every kilometre you go closer to the ranges, it gets that much more rain. So if you can just stay off
Avoid
that line a bit,
so anyway, you were Sacred Hill, you said, and then
so Sacred Hill, and then what was exciting about that opportunity was obviously developing new vineyard, and then they had on the corner of Gimblett Road, they had a property there that they managed for some investors, and so that was called Balthazar.
Oh yeah,
Vineyard.
yeah, sure.
And
Great wines out of there.
Yeah, so it's really
John something, right?
John Lockie.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Some really stony soils, like some of those trunks were the size of your little finger after 10 years. It was, but then also a little block further towards Omahu Gravels as well, called Woodlands. So 3 sites, and so that was my first real experience.
So really, it's really sort of embedded in the Gravels as a young viticulturist. Yeah, and
bordering Villa Maria vineyards. So I used to see these carloads of villa staff turn up at harvest time and all jump out and wonder what was going on over the fence. And I didn't know a lot about Villa Maria, but it was so from Sacred Hill. My wife Rebecca and I really wanted to spend some time in France, so we sort of upped and packed our bags, and I got a job with a company called Gabriel Meff, which is based in Gigondas. But I was working on an estate in the Languedoc, Costières de Nîmes region, and was working the vineyard and the winery for a year, so I had a year in France.
What kind of wines were you making there?
So generally they were Syrah, Grenache, awesome. Carignan-based wines.
I love that stuff, man. There's another, I can, probably because of price, but, when I go out to eat, or particularly in some sales trips in the States, I immediately gravitate to that part of the wine list these days. Yeah. And partially because of, the Syrah that we're doing in Hawke's Bay. Yeah. I find so much more interest, and, to find a good Bordeaux can either cost you a lot of money or it can be completely random. Yeah. And Burgundy is usually just can't afford it anyway, or so I tend to gravitate southern France, Languedoc, and Grenache, Syrahs. They're just so interesting, those wines. But I think part of it too is what we're doing here. And speaking of Grenache, the only Grenache I ever was a part of making was with Villa Maria when I worked at Vital. Do you guys still have some of that?
Yeah, we do. Still, it's only a hectare there.
Yeah, I remember it was just a few barrels or something.
Yeah, so that was made at, you're right, the first couple of vintages were very small and made at Vital. Yeah. And now it's made at Villa Maria, and, that's getting a following, that wine, so it's...
You guys do 100% Grenache?
We do, yeah.
Oh, awesome, yeah.
So, it's been, I think this, the 16 vintage, actually, there's a barrel of Tempranillo in there just to add a bit of flavour and a bit of spice in there, but otherwise it's been 100%.
Well, this provides an opportunity for me to... give a little love to Villa Maria, because I have been known to thrash some of the big dogs here and there. Not all of them, but just a few that, you got to have some people to fight against in this world, But not just because I worked for Villa back in the day and I still have a lot of friends who work there, but it has a lot to do with that they champion innovation, organics, which we'll talk about in a second. And then, doing interesting single vineyard wines and having a passion about, leading the way for Hawke's Bay and New Zealand to make premium wines and to take some risks. I guess that must start at the top with George.
Yeah, he's
finger on the pulse for an old guy. He seems to be really excited still. He doesn't seem to. I don't know how he does it. I hope I can have that kind of drive when I'm. He's got to be in his 70s.
He would be in his mid 70s.
It's awesome, man.
Incredible level of energy and commitment. He's just so focused. And one thing that he always comes back to quality. And so, I don't know. You do notice with some of the large wine companies that they will want to produce a volume of fruit, and so they'll find vineyards and plant varieties to meet the demand. But if you want to make quality wines, you're always looking at the site, thinking about what will that site do best with, what variety will grow the best. So we always focus on what's the best variety for the site, rather than being
we need a lot more Merlot and just plant it somewhere. Sorry, you're in France.
Back to France. So had a year in France, which the old 35-hour working week suited us really well.
That's pretty cool.
So came to Friday, and I think I was pretty much the only one who showed up for work most weeks. But we used the weekends. So by mid-morning Friday, we were off. Rebecca would pack the car, and we'd drive to a different wine region in France and have 3 days, get back for work on the Monday again.
Yeah.
But it was actually the 2003 vintage I was there, which was the really hot year. They called it Le Chaleur, which was so hot that a lot of people were getting sick from the heat over there.
Yeah, if you look on vintage charts for a lot of Italy and France and Spain, it says, I forget what the other letters would be, but it would say I for irregular.
Oh, really? Okay.
Because they don't want to classify and say it was a hot, great year, because some places it was too hot and it just made the wines like they never were before.
Yeah, sure.
So I guess you experienced that a bit.
Yeah, so I turned up, post Veraison, but was told, go and have a bit of a look around France, come back ready for vintage, but I was doing the sampling for grape maturity. And obviously, I'd only just come from a harvest, so my palate, I was probably pretty tuned into what the sugar levels tasted like. And I kept thinking, man, these grapes look like they're not far away.
Yeah.
And we'd send them into the laboratory and they'd come back at 20 bricks or 21 bricks. They're climbing slowly. But I just had this feeling that the sugar levels were higher than what we were getting. And then by the time we pulled our rosé and it came in at 16% alcohol. Oh. So, probably now I'd go with my gut instinct and question the lab results. But in that season, it was just like, we'll just hang it on till the winemaker's ready. And
it's always good to taste. Yeah, we've had I've seen that happen in Hawke's Bay.
Yeah,
where you're like, we got to let it get to 23.5, and then you pick it and it's 25.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, actually, the Grenache you mentioned before, in 2014, prior to that, it had always been the last grapes of the year by a good 2 weeks. And in 2014, we thought, we'll throw a Grenache sample in. And it was a month earlier than we would normally pick it, and it was already 24.5 bricks.
Wow.
And so we thought we'd better resample it and just double check that. And by the next day, it was 24.8 bricks. So we were like, let's get this in there.
Yeah. Oh, I got to taste that wine. I didn't even know it existed. Maybe somebody told me that for a while, but
yeah,
it can be found.
The 14 vintage is still around. I think you'd probably through Liquor King here in Hawke's Bay, and otherwise through the Salador. Yeah. But Nick Piccone, he has these. You probably know better in the winery. These rolly type fermenters. I think it's like an oak fermenter, maybe 1,000 litres.
And they spin them
So he put the Grenache in there in 2014, and he didn't take it off skins until November.
Awesome.
So kept tasting it, and the tannins just kept getting more and more resolved. So kept it on, and ended up pressing it off a month before Christmas, I think.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that if you taste that one, it's got big tannins, but they're really smooth and it's an interesting wine.
Long chains.
Yeah.
That's what you want. So when did you get back from France? Or did you go somewhere else first?
So on the way back, what happened, we were staying in this little winery apartment in France, and Rebecca had found it harder to get work than me there, so we thought, before we go back to New Zealand, we'll have her try and get a job teaching. So she applied for a few jobs internationally, but lo and behold, the job she got was in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam. Oh. And so we'd always wanted to go to Vietnam, but all of a sudden we had this opportunity to go and work there. So Rebecca applied and got the job, and a few weeks later we were in Ho Chi Minh. So that was before we came back to New Zealand.
It's a little humid for grape growing there.
Yeah, that's right. So I was looking forward to just kicking back for a year and
sweet.
Spending some time
eating some amazing food, man.
Yeah,
I love that food.
Yeah, that's
absolutely love it. Yeah, I just had some. The Auckland version of it.
Oh, okay. Oh, nice.
But I'm always, we talk about, I look for certain wines on a wine list or styles. I'm like, we're going to go out and eat, Vietnamese, sure.
Yeah, cool.
Thai as well, but more Vietnamese.
Yeah.
I love that food.
Yeah.
That spice and some of the hardiness of it too.
Yeah. They learned a lot from the French in terms of making good beef stocks and things. So
yeah.
I think that's the heart of their noodle soups and stuff is in those.
There's actually some places more in New York, but there's a couple in Philadelphia that you speak of that French thing, that they're like these Vietnamese sandwich places because they use the French bread with the Vietnamese, whatever they want to put on there, but it's like nothing you've tasted because it's like, European bread with the spice and, Asian food on it, and hits the spot with some beers.
Yeah, they call it banh mi.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So good, man. And good challenging to put wines with, I guess. But
yeah, that's right. Cause
mostly
they have this,
beer.
yeah, because they have like shredded carrot and stuff that's been fermented in vinegar or something like that. So could be, might not make the wine look too flash.
Yeah, a little bit of that VA kind of thrown through there. But that's cool. A year in Vietnam.
Yeah, so it ended
Or
up
a
being
year, or
well, it
more?
ended up being 2.5 years.
Oh,
so,
wow.
I with my spare time, I started doing some wine tastings in central Ho Chi Minh, just trying to promote New Zealand wines a bit.
Yeah.
And the guys buying some of the wines off came to one of my tastings and then tapped me on the shoulder and said, would I like to work for him in more of a, looking after the wine department of his business and importing wines, and then helping build up relationships with some of the key accounts. So, for example, the Hilton had just arrived in, it was the Park Hyatt had just arrived in Ho Chi Minh, and, he wanted to build a business relationship with them. And so I helped with that. So it was a lot of fun. And, great thing about Vietnam is the population is very much skewed to, young people, and they're all looking at new opportunities to try things, taste things, and food and wine. So met a lot of people who are really interested in learning more about wine as well.
Awesome.
Yeah. So then, I guess you're sort of wondering, well, when did I come back?
No, we're getting there. I got time.
Yeah.
It's sometimes you might not have as much time.
No, I'm good.
But yeah, so you were there in a couple of years, and did that somehow lead? Did you start somewhere before you started at Villa Maria when you came back to New Zealand?
No, so what we always intended to come back, but obviously the life in Vietnam, we were having a lot of fun, and we're interested in having a family. So
Sure.
Rebecca actually got pregnant in Vietnam, and that was sort of we were always keen to come back and have a family here in Hawke's Bay. So we
Smart move.
Yes, we came back at the end of 2006, but a friend's wedding was in October. I came back by myself for his wedding and approached 5 wine companies in Hawke's Bay and said, look, moving back next year, would really like to talk to you about opportunities. And met up with Emma Taylor, who was the viticulturist at that stage.
Yeah, I remember Emma.
Yeah, so she didn't tell me at the time, but she was actually pregnant.
Oh, that's right.
And,
that's why. Yeah.
And so my first job was to cover her maternity leave.
Mm-hmm.
So she left just before harvest 2007, and I sort of covered that vintage. And she has come back to work for Villa, but never back to the role I have now. She's worked in other roles, but raised 3 children along the way, and so worked part-time off and on. Yeah,
that's cool that because she's a talented person, that they've kept her on and made it work.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's another good sign of a good company that does those type of things. So, and then we meet.
Yeah,
and here
right.
we are. And geez, lots of things going on with Villa Maria these days. I went to pick up a mutual friend of ours who lives behind the Tiawa winery.
Okay, yeah.
And I'd been there, I used to work at Tiawa, and, I've been there for lunch and this and that. And by the way, the restaurant's really, really good these days. And, there's a couple containers back there, yeah. And then all of a sudden, I went there a couple weeks ago. I was like, woof, here we go.
Yeah.
So it looks like it's full on, and it's going to be a pretty awesome Villa Maria winery there, which I think will do awesome for this area. I think
there's a lot of activity out the back there at the moment.
Yeah, I bet. That's exciting. But that's probably a good place to start. Tiawa being one of the newer holdings and property of Villa Maria. It's only partially on the gravels, right? There's only was it just the front vineyards there, basically?
Yeah, so it's a 100-hectare vineyard, and I think about 45 hectares are on the gravels, but because Tiawa's tucked in behind Roy's Hill a little bit there, so the gravel that formed Tiawa's Gimblett Gravels side of the vineyard was when the river was in flood, it would have washed out across.
So there's some silty parts there too, some heavier parts. Yeah.
So the driveway actually is a good line to. You've got Gimblett Gravels on the left, and it's more bridge pass soils, more silty soils on the right hand side when you're driving in.
Yeah.
So I think it's an amazing property because you've got got the benefit of those really stony soils for the late ripening reds, and Syrah and Cabernet Franc just in particular do so well there, And then on the right-hand side, the Merlot actually with a bit more silt in the soil seems to do really well. And further along, Chardonnay, we've got 4 clones of Chardonnay all on that slightly heavier soil. Some of it's dry farm now as well, and it just produces amazing wines.
And what do you think it is? I mean, that's a great site to talk about where, you know, in your best year or in a tougher year like we just got through in 17, I've worked on the Gravels, worked on vineyards there for three or four straight vintages, and you literally leaf plucking and pruning and doing everything and watching the fruit go through the whole. The one thing I noticed was in the tougher years, it definitely helped that it was free draining because we will get the odd rain incident.
Yeah.
And I found it amazing that even in the middle of the summer is one thing. When if it rains, then 2 days later it's just like yellow again and completely dry. Whereas I think a lot of other parts of Hawke's Bay, it's not like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't retain the moisture as much. I mean, what is it you think that you find with those? Because Villa's got vineyards all over the Gravels, really. So generally, I know there's a lot of variation throughout those soils. But what is it that you think makes it so great?
I think you hit the nail on the head with just being so free draining. I mean, there wouldn't be many other places in the world that is, a pure gravel sort of deep soil like that.
Yeah.
And so in terms of soil moisture holding capacity, it's very low nutrient holding capacity. And then, you have to think too, the environment for the vines to live and survive in is pretty extreme.
Yeah.
So I think, the vines are naturally devigorated, so they produce less canopy. I think, you alluded to it, we do a little bit of leaf plucking, but the canopies are quite open.
Yeah, no, there's a lot less than we have to do in Bridge Paw, for instance, and that's still pretty good,
You can tell a lot by looking at the shadows on the ground, like when you walk in the Gravels, if you look at the shadows, there's not this sort of complete shadow down from the road. It's sort of speckled light on the ground.
Definitely,
But the vines just, there's enough energy in the soil, and particularly if you need to irrigate, you can develop a nice strong green canopy. But then by Christmas time, the vines have really switched into ripening the fruit, and there's no sign of any growing tips anymore. So all the energy's going into ripening those grapes.
Yeah.
And then I guess the bunches tend to be a bit smaller. The berry size is small. So everything about it is sort of pointing towards really intense flavours and concentration.
Yeah.
So I think that's a real benefit. And like you said, in challenging seasons, it's you can come in after heavy rain the next day and there's no sign of even a puddle anywhere.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think also it comes with its challenges, like, it's very tempting in those soils to irrigate. And so if you're not careful, you develop roots that sort of are concentrated in the topsoil and rather than getting nice and deep down. So you have to, I think irrigation management is probably one of the trickiest things for optimizing quality out of that soil as well.
Yeah. Do you find as far as the wines themselves, now granted, you've got a bunch of different winemakers even within Villa Maria.
Yeah, sure.
But, you get some wines up on the table. But Villa Maria is probably a good example because you guys make wines from all over the country.
Yeah.
And then I know there's a lot of people that work in that company that are passionate, and you obviously have a little bit of a background in the trade, which I didn't know was pretty cool. I always find out something interesting about people. So you obviously have a passion for wines, and when you get those wines in front of you compared to others, I mean, for me, there's kind of I don't know if angularity is a word, but I'm going to make it up. There's sort of angular, those tannins. I certainly within Hawke's Bay, I can pick them out.
Yeah.
I have trouble sometimes outside of, I just know this is a New World wine as opposed to an Old World wine.
Yeah, sure.
Picking them out of lineups. But just for the wines themselves, I mean, is there something that you think you find anything?
Yeah, I think, the wines, we just had an interesting tasting over the weekend with Peter Gordon was here.
Oh, yeah.
And it was matched with some of the top wines. So we were comparing wines from sort of the Havelock Hills with the Gravels and more like your neighbouring vineyard here, Redstone. And, the Gimblett Gravels wine did stand out for being probably darker in colour, more concentrated colour, but the palate it had the elements of being lots of fruit purity, but also some strong tannins there. That it was a 13 vintage, I think.
Oh yeah, well that'll be bright. So it's a bright year though too.
It is bright, yeah. So it's but yeah, if I was when I'm describing the Gimblett Gravels, I did talk about the fact that the wines are concentrated, the tannins are strong. You can often almost taste a gravelly type note to the wines.
Yep.
But
yeah, there's certainly. I mean, the more you know about the different regions and what it always seems to make sense. If it's a quality wine, you know, it seems to make sense. So it's always funny when you see them in a lineup and you go, okay. Yeah. And I think that's probably what's a big thing behind the success is, distinction, the quality, because there's a lot of good producers there, then small and big and medium or whatever.
Yeah.
And that distinction, the association has done a really good job of and it's got a cool name. Don't play that down at all. That always helps to have, because I've for years since I've started bringing Hawke's Bay wines back into the States.
Yeah,
they would know Gimblett Gravels ahead of Hawke's Bay sometimes. Like a lot of times.
Oh, interesting.
And it's changing now.
Yeah,
it's because there's a few more Hawke's Bay wines in there, and everybody seems to be studying to be a somm these days.
Yeah,
so they kind of, that's an appellation within an appellation kind of thing. But it's pretty cool that they're, very unique wines, and that makes it kind of marketable, and any advantage you can have in this game.
Yeah, and I think that what we talked about in terms of more challenging harvests, the consistency of the gravels remains pretty
very
high.
Much so, yeah.
So whereas other areas might suffer more from that, but like you said at the start, I think the Gimblett Gravels. It's not all about just pure stones. There's also areas where the river laid down more silt. And, some of the early viticulturists within Villa made some good decisions about planting Syrah and Cabernet on the more stony soils. But Merlot, I think, definitely produces more plush style wines with more of the violets and the pure plum and things going on, and with more balanced tannin structure. On the soils with a bit more silt, and where we have Merlot planted more on the stony phases, it does well in the years that aren't so hot and dry, but in the really hot, dry years it suffers.
It's too much.
So
yeah.
Whereas Cabernet, I think it's more vigorous, and in those stony soils it will dig its roots down deeper, and it doesn't suffer so much from the drought or the stress from low soil moisture.
What about Cab Franc? Do you guys have decent amount in there?
Yeah, we don't have a lot on our own vineyards, but that was one of the exciting things about buying Tiawa vineyard, because it's got 3 different clones and parcels of Cabernet Franc there. So that's that's been really exciting to see Cabernet Franc, particularly in those soils. So something we're looking at for the future.
Yeah, I think the scare of green, as it was in the sort of 80s, 90s, which was fair enough. I've tasted some wines from that. It's pretty rough days. I'm planting, the wrong clones of Cabernet on the wrong soils, and you get these, lime green wines, basically. But that has made people shy away from the fact that, Franc's, it's a green that's kind of more floral sometimes, and it almost goes back to that Beaujolais thing where it's slightly different style of wine, and they do well in the barrel, in the bottle, and you might pick it off the vine and go, this is sugar ripe, but it's a little green. I'm not sure, but we've watched it at Paratua where I've worked, and I've seen it in a few other places where, like Beach House does a Gimblett Gravels Franc some years, I think. Yeah,
and I had a bottle of the Gimblett Trinity Hill, the Gimblett 2014 on Saturday night too, and that was 40% Cab Franc.
I believe it, man.
Because
they shine over time,
Yeah.
I think in those mid years, the Merlot just starts taking a back seat, and that Cabernet Sauvignon is always going to be the backbone.
Yeah.
But the Franc, and from like sort of year 3, 4, for the next 10 years, it's the one that just explodes out of the glass, makes the wine so much more interesting. So. I was just curious because, again, I know you guys do some individual stuff. So just to be clear, there's not going to be a single vineyard Cab Franc coming out anytime soon from
not right now,
from Villa Maria. I'll keep an ear out for that. All right.
We're just really looking hard at what are the best clones of Cabernet Franc that we can get our hands on, and look at some of the history of these Tiawa blocks and what clonal material. Because I think Cabernet Franc is one variety where the clonal selection makes a huge difference.
100%, man. We've had some stuff that never makes our top range, and other stuff that we never want to put in the lower range. And we've loved the 326 and 214.
Okay.
But I could tell you that it's really interesting about viticulture is I could tell you that, and as far as I know, for Cabernet Sauvignon, for instance, the Cabernet, the clone LC10 everybody likes on the gravels, it just doesn't do well for us in Bridge Pa. Whereas the Clone 15 that makes our top lines every year. And you just didn't know that until they did it, Then luckily those original people who owned that place planted both.
Yeah.
And I think the LC10's doing better with age, but it's still not the intensity.
Yeah.
But if I were to talk to people growing in the Gimblett Gravels, it's probably the opposite. So I might be telling you the wrong clones.
No, I think you're on the money. We've planted 10 and 15 next to each other on stony soils, and the 10 shines, the LC10. But, that's a good example of, for all the work we do in terms of viticulture, the vine and the soil really drives
up front, making the right decision.
That combination. And, so while we can take credit for these wines, it's, the magical thing about growing grapes for wine, a lot of it's in the soil and the combination of that with the vine and the rootstock choice. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. There is sort of the... I think what we all appreciate, and probably one of the reasons why I do this podcast, is there's a bit of magic out there and a bit of the unknown, and some years you get lucky, but that we're all sort of a part of this. And one of the good things about Hawke's Bay is we do share this information, and everybody seems to be relatively friendly with each other. So that's good. It doesn't exist everywhere. But I'm going to let you go soon, but I have one final question I just thought of when you mentioned earlier you went to high school in Hawke's Bay. I did hear some legendary stories about a van you had in high school. Is that true?
A van?
That you had some sort of killer mobile or some
that was a bit later on, actually.
Oh, it was later on. Oh, okay.
No, I had a blue Murray Minor.
What's a Murray Minor for us Americans?
It's a Morris, English Morris Minor. It looked a bit...
It's like a VW bus kind of?
English... No, this was a car. English, like a VW Bug Beetle, but the English version. But when I was down in Otago, I bought a two-door Chrysler Valiant, which was I think it was a 1969, and that was the wagon back in the day. I was surfing a lot, and so I used to see that car a lot on the roads around here going out to the beach. But when we got married, that was our wedding car, but it wasn't long after that wasn't so suitable anymore.
It passed away.
Yeah.
Went to the graveyard.
Yeah.
Back on the old. So you did never race that on the old racetrack over the Gimblett Gravels.
No,
it used to be a racetrack.
No, I did drive it to work a few times down there, but we got married out at the Rifleman's Vineyard, the Sacred Hill Rifleman's Vineyard, up the Dartmoor Valley, and our favourite thing of our wedding day was the two of us in the old car driving back to the party back in Napier. Had
just
a lot of
you
fun.
two.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was cool.
Oh, well, that seems like a good place to end. I'll let you go. You're probably got tons of things to do in the vineyard and meetings and this and that. But
we've got a plan where we're going to put this Cabernet Franc.
Yeah, that's right. And and a big winery expansion. Exciting times, man.
Yeah, it is exciting. We're hoping that the new winery will be ready for the harvest that's coming up soon. So
that's crazy.
Yeah,
that's really, really exciting, man.
Yeah, I'm glad I don't have to worry about that too much. Just focus on the grapes.
Just focus on the grapes. All right, man. Cheers.
Thanks, Dan.
How about Ollie? What a cool dude. It was great to talk with him and catch up. we see each other at events and things like that, but it was really good to sit down with him and chat. And now I feel like next time I see him, I'm going to have a lot more to hang out and talk to him about. What a good dude. I had no idea about that Vietnam thing. That's why you sit down with these people and have a chat. He's kind of an unassuming guy, but super knowledgeable. That stuff he was saying about speckled light through the leaves of the Gimblett Gravels, of the vines, really something I hadn't thought about that canopy size and how the light also gets in a little extra, and it's just fascinating stuff. I don't know, maybe I'm just a crazy wine geek, but I think that stuff is really cool. Also had my first mic smash. I don't know if you heard in the first couple minutes there, I just smacked my coffee mug right into the mic. But we've got a small production team here at Vintage Stories, so that won't be edited out, or hasn't been edited out by the time you're listening to it. So I want to thank Ollie again, and once again, we were sponsored by the Gimblett Gravels on this episode and the next few episodes. Again, I really, really suggest you check out those annual vintage selection. It's a special thing, comes out once a year. Check it out. Also, again, hashtag Decibel Wines, hashtag Drink Decibel. We're just getting the wines out there as much as we can now. We're feeling really confident and excited about things happening in New Zealand, as well as in the States. We're talking to some other countries now, and hopefully I'll have more news on that in the next few months. But yeah, again, use the promo code DB Podcast to get 10% off your first order. And thanks a lot, Ollie, and we'll see you guys next time. We're going to talk with Warren Gibson from Trinity Hill, a bit of a epic, legendary dude who he just drops knowledge on us for a while. Talk to you guys soon. See you.